Hey there, thanks for joining. Thanks for clicking on this video to see what's going on. This is a GAD journal review, and that's where patients who have been impacted by gadolinium are reading research studies, and we're trying to figure out, connecting the dots and putting the pieces together and trying to figure out what went wrong, how did we end up getting so sick, and why did we end up getting an injection of gadolinium, which is toxic and that's documented by a CDC statement saying that even in small amounts may cause significant morbidity or mortality, and yet it's still being injected 30 to 50 million times annually. So we have to figure that out, and we really, as patients like myself, we just don't want anyone to live what we're living through. So we want to prevent that. And we don't want to say don't get it. We just want to say be informed. Be informed and read the medication guide and know what you're injecting in your body and what you're inhaling in your body and what you're ingesting. Because we live in a toxic world and there's a lot of sick people right now. And doctors are doing the best they can, and they're trying to figure out, and they're trying to be helpful, and you go there and you want their help. But it's always good if you know what you're putting in your body. And so gadolinium is a toxic rare earth metal, and it seems to be causing quite a few problems. The community's growing rapidly. So the point of doing these reviews of journals is just to learn more, that we all learn more together, right? Because knowledge is powerful. So I'm going to talk about 3 different studies, and then I'm going to talk about the medication guide, okay? I am a acute pancreatitis patient, and I belong to a group of pancreatic patients who, there's over 100,000 people in that group. That's just huge. And they're all at various stages of pancreatic issues, everything from acute pancreatitis, reoccurring pancreatitis, to we're going to talk about these transplants of another organ, and then how that might tie into the pancreas, and then get an injection of a toxic rare earth metal and how that may play a role. And then finally, I think, we're just going to talk about pancreatitis. So the groups, that group that I just mentioned, over 100,000 people, they are all in various stages, and some of them it's progressed into cancer or whatever, and they're all just fighting for their life, fighting to feel better. They feel terrible. Pancreatitis is terrible in itself. I can't even imagine pancreatic cancer, which I did lose 3 friends in 1 year from pancreatic cancer. So it's a rising disease, and we need to figure out what's adding to the body's burden that's creating that. And it can be foods, it can be environmental, it can be toxins. We're living in a toxic world. But the more we know, the more we can prevent it, right? Hopefully prevent it. That's the goal. Anyway, be informed. Read the medication guides. That's what I'm going to talk about today. So pancreatitis, the first case study is gadolinium-induced acute graft pancreatitis in simultaneous pancreas-kidney transplant recipient. This woman was a young woman, 32 years old, and she'd had a kidney transplant. And apparently the kidney was either the body's trying to rebuke it and didn't like it or whatever, but she finds herself back in the hospital, and they inject her with gadolinium, and then she gets worse, and the symptoms get worse. So then this study talks about, it's a rare phenomenon, and they'd only had 5 cases reported, and this was in 2022. And it's really hard when they say 5 cases, because a lot of people don't report that they've had a reaction to gadolinium, because they may never connect the dots. You could have a reaction to gadolinium and not even know it, or not even think about it, because no one expects a diagnostic tool intended to be helpful to add to your body burden by injecting a heavy metal, right? So no one thinks about that. And it takes a while to connect the dots, if ever. But anyway, so it talks about that only 5 cases had been reported, and that it's really quite rare. So I would say, well, we need to do more studies. We need to do more follow-up studies with these transplant patients to say, how many injections did you have before, during, after the transplants? And then what was the follow-up 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 15 year later? And did the patient heal, go on with a great, happy life, or were they sick, or whatever? I'm not sure we have enough studies to know. And that's what I would encourage anyone from the industry who's watching this to let's advocate for more studies, okay, so we can figure this out together, because we know in nephrology they're doing amazing work and they're just showing that gadolinium is not good for the body. And the CDC statement says that too. So it talks about the free gadolinium and that it sets off cytokine stimulation, it sets off macrophage activation, it sets off attraction of fibroblasts, and none of those things are healthy or good for us or whatever. Those are all symptoms magnifying a problem that the body's inflamed. So again, more studies are needed, right? But few patients, this report's only 5, the transplant. So I don't know if the body was trying to reject it or whatever. That's the first study. So let's move on really quickly. The second study is called gadolinium-induced recurrent acute pancreatitis. And this one just talks about the lipase levels and the amylase levels. And those are 2 markers that they blood markers that they'll do if you go to the hospital or the ER and you think you might have pancreatitis, or the doctors think you may have pancreatitis. They'll run those levels and then move forward accordingly. But in this study, they say, well, acute pancreatitis is a sudden swelling and inflammation of the pancreas. And so we need to do a better job as humans. We're living in our bodies. We know what's causing inflammation. Inflammation's this warning marker that we've injected or ingested or inhaled something that the body doesn't like, some kind of foreigner or whatever, and or inflamed it, or we've been sick, or we've come across some environmental thing that's set off inflammation. But it does talk about in this that drug-induced acute pancreatitis is rare, between 1.4 and 2%. So for recurrent acute pancreatitis. I happen to be one of those reoccurring people. So this was concerning to me when I read this study, that it's not 0, and we'd like it to be 0. And I know that that's like the greatest wish list in the world, right? But we as patients, we have some control over what we put into our body. So if you have inflammation and stuff and you have a bellyache, pay attention. Those are warning signs, okay? So that's the second study. The third study, this is the one I paid for after I was first injected and I lost my memory. My brain got, after my first injection of gadolinium, my brain tested in 4 areas for like dementia-like symptoms. It was quite the journey. Anyway, so gadolinium-induced acute pancreatitis, and they call that AP, acute pancreatitis. This study has 8 references, and this is the one that was published in 2018, and I had to pay for it, but now I found it for free on the web. That's exciting, because that means more people can access it and read about it. This was a 56-year-old man, and he had been in the hospital for sinus and congestion and headaches and all kinds of things, and then he had an MRI with contrast, and a few hours later, he reported that he had fever, nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, fatigue, blah, 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 and went back to the ER, it looks like maybe. And he had been a smoker, and he denied alcohol use. But upon accessing, examination and everything, they figured out that he did have pancreatitis, and his lipase level was 5 times the normal amount. So lipase level and amylase levels are just 2 markers in the blood that they can do a blood draw when you're in that kind of pain, and they can tell you, oh yeah, you have pancreatitis. We need to calm the pancreas down, cool it down. And there's a whole, if it's impacting you, and you're going to follow up and go to the ER and get help. So that's one thing, right? But if they want to do an MRI with contrast, you need to be informed and you need to know, because the next thing I'm going to tell you is I'm 7 years out, and I just recently reread the medication guide for the exact medication that I was injected with, and I want to just share with you what it says. This is why the medication guides are so important, that everyone, every drug has a medication guide. A lot of times we get a little, like if you pick up a pharmacy prescription, you get a little information thing clipped on the bag with your receipt, and it says, oh, this drug may cause blah, 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 headache, nausea, vomiting, temporary things, it'll all go away, just, follow up with your doctor if anything happens, right? But the medication guide, it could be anywhere from a 12 to a 30-page document, and it really goes into detail of everything that's wrong. The drug manufacturers are required to produce a medication guide for every drug, and those are free to you. You, the consumer, can go out and Google it, and you can print or open and read the document, the medication guide, so that you know. And they put everything in a medication guide, even if it's like 1% of people, they will put that in there as a side effect. And if you're the 1%, you want to know. You do want to know, right? Because it's your body and you want to know what you're putting into it so you can make those decisions. I had 4 injections and no one ever mentioned gadolinium to me. That word never came out of a medical person's mouth. And it took me 2 years to connect the dots. And I was so sick, I thought I was dying. It was terrible. It's been a 7-year journey. I'm so much better. I still have horrible things going on, but I don't even focus on those anymore. I just focus on the good part of life and advocating, because I think it's important. I don't want anyone to go through this, and no one in the Gadolinium support group wants anyone to go through what we've been through. Death would be so much easier. So I'm going to read the paragraph that's in the medication guide. The thing in the medication guide, they kind of go from like common, and then most common, and then like 3 different levels, right, of reactions that patients have to various medications. So when we get to the serious adverse reactions, here's what it says. Serious adverse reactions consisting of convulsions, pulmonary edema, acute necrotizing pancreatitis, and anaphylactoid reactions were reported in 1% of subjects in clinical trials. Well, 1% doesn't sound like a lot, and this study looked at 4,967 patients. So, 5,000 patients, 1%. So that's not a lot of patients, but when it's you and your body, it makes a difference because it is impactful. We wrote a book. Patients wrote a book. It's called Gadolinium Deposition and Toxicity, Humanizing a Life-Changing Event. I invite you to go out and Google it. It's on Amazon. It's an interesting story. My story's in there, and 24 other patient stories, and we provide some information for anyone who wants to become educated about this contrast. And it is life-changing for many, and it takes a while to connect the dots. Anyway, I hope that your journey is one of wellness always. The way to make sure that happens is to be informed and know what you're putting in your body. Informed consent's huge, and we have to make changes in that area. Anyway, take care. Thanks for joining, and follow us for more information. Take care. Bye.